So guys, welcome to another capstone chat. And today we have Hanna Turner with us, and she is a 2012 graduate of the communications program, and she minored in print journalism. She's currently zooming in from Fairmont, where she's the marketing communications person for the city, which is kind of an interesting task. I don't think we've ever had anybody that has sort of a similar position. So without much else to say, why don't you just go ahead and start, Hanna? Thank you.
Thank you, Monica. Hello, everyone. My name is Hanna. I am coming to you from beautiful downtown Fairmont. My office is in the City Hall here in Fairmont, and my position has only been around for the time that I have had it. So I'm the first person to hold this position for Fairmont. I think that they really saw a need to have this type of position for website, social media, kind of anything. They really started to see the need for it more and more, and had people in different positions kind of filling in the gaps. I think at the time our purchasing coordinator was handling updating the website, so it wasn't necessarily a good situation. So I have been with the city for 8 years. It's been quite a journey. Working in government is ever changing, which kind of to some of you might seem like a surprise, but it constantly changes, especially at a municipal level, such a small level. We get new city managers, new department heads, new council members frequently. So things change, and you kind of have to catch yourself and start moving in a different direction depending on who gets elected or who gets hired. I've been here since June 30th of 2014, and at that time, the City of Fairmont did not have a Facebook page, so which is crazy. The city manager at the time hated Facebook, did not want any part of Facebook, so the city didn't even have a Facebook page at the time. I think they had been locked out of their website. Their website company had closed, didn't notify them, didn't give them access to their website, and it was basically a memorial page from the day that it stopped working. So you could go back from September and see stuff that was going on in like May from that same year. So since then, I started a Facebook page. We do have Facebook now, and we have really added a lot of different features. We have a website. I don't know, most of you probably aren't familiar with municipal government or even county level government to this level, but Civic Plus is a big company that does municipal websites, and we have a website through them, which is like top of the line, the best one that you can have. We were the first in the state to work with them, so that is something that I have always tried to do in this position, is make sure that we're on the cutting edge of innovation, ways that we can reach out to the residents and business owners and make things easier for them, make us more accessible to them. And, we're always changing things, always learning new things, ways that we need to improve. But I've also taken on other roles with the city. So I currently work in Parks and Recreation as well, which is not necessarily something that seems like it would fit with this job. But when you look at it from a community engagement and community outreach perspective, it actually fits when you look at it from that area. People enjoy being outside. It's a quality of life thing. And it's a way to directly connect with the community. So I see a couple of people have questions. Grace, what is your question?
Hi, Hannah. Thank you for being here. You mentioned that like in your position that you were kind of like a part of bringing in like new technologies or new processes or ways of thinking. So like how hard was that, like integrating like new technologies? And like you said, you started the Facebook. What was that like?
So it's difficult because when you start doing stuff like that, you also have to remember I was the only person in this position. I did not have anybody below me. So I was going to have to be managing the bulk of all of that. So it had to be something that I knew that I could be really comfortable with. but I also had to make sure that I could get buy-in from everybody else. So one of the things that I did was you always get phone calls for company sales calls, try our new software. And sometimes it's stuff that would really work for us. And when it did, I always tried to learn more about it and make a good case for it. And one of the things was Seamless Docs. It's this document form center platform that makes it fillable, completable online. You get an email copy. They can do a whole line of who has to sign off on things like building permits and business license, and they can all sign it, all the department heads that have to sign it electronically, and it just goes through the line and then it goes back to the applicant. An email copy gets with everybody's signature goes back to them. And it's a great tool for us because it's a way that we can have everything that we need in one place. And I just had to make sure that I could at least train them enough to be able to sign off on it, because you have to, always keep in mind that there's going to be people of different generations working wherever you are working. And so you have to make sure that you can either have the support from the company that you're working with or be able to educate yourself enough to be able to make sure you can train everybody adequately, because a new tool like that is not going to work for you the way you want it to if you have to do it all yourself or if nobody's using it. So
That's awesome. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. The fact that the other people in the situation would also have to be, versed in some form or fashion. But yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
yeah, no problem. James, you have a question.
Yeah, you said that working in government, you've had like some issues between changing between the different people that are elected. What are some of like the specific problems you've run into between, I guess, people being elected to where you're working?
One of the probably the most significant things that's happened when a change of hands has occurred. We got a new city manager back in 2019, and she did some restructuring. And originally, my position was directly under the city manager. But when she did her restructuring, she felt like I needed to work in a more creative and collaborative environment than she was really able to provide me with, which in hindsight, I really appreciated her seeing that I really needed that. And so she moved me into the planning and development office. And so my direct boss is the director of planning and development. And we're a staff of 4 total. So it's my boss, myself, and then we have an assistant planner, and then we have a administrative assistant. And so the 4 of us work really well together. And the assistant planner and I work on a lot of projects together. One of our newest projects is a city podcast. We have a podcast that talks about how things work in Fairmont, and we talk to different department heads, different community leaders of other organizations that the city works with directly. We're trying to get every city council member to also come on and record an episode with us, and it's been really good for community outreach. We used to have a program called Fairmont 101 that did the same thing, or like a Citizens Academy might be something that some of you have seen in your towns before. But, without being moved into that department, I probably would not be able to run this podcast by myself along with everything else. So it's been really great. And it also gives me the opportunity to have a backup that, if I have to be off work, somebody can update the website or post something on the city's Facebook page. So it was the biggest change. It was the most significant one, I think, for my career, but also just out of everything that's happened here, that's probably been the biggest one. Robert, you have a question.
So do you do like any like planning activities like for the community? Like, I don't know, for example, like Earth Day, do you like set up like a community thing that they do?
We have done stuff like that in the past. We're starting to kind of dive into that a little bit more with some of our community partners, because we do have such a small staff in our department, and we are probably, we would argue that we're the busiest department, but we have the most projects going on. And because I also work with some parks and recreation stuff, it's a little difficult, but I do try to through parks, try to plan some community things. Right now we're working on a big project to create a universally accessible playground, and that's going to be a really significant thing for the community, and there will be events and stuff based around that. But for the most part, we do collaborations with other organizations. We have Main Street Fairmont, which is like a Main Street USA organization. And our police department, they have in the past done National Night Out, which is a big nationwide thing for police departments. And we planned the bulk of that for them and organized it to get the community involved. So we definitely have, but it's not necessarily something that we do regularly. But we hope to definitely get better at that. We do a lot of things with our local United Way, the Tiger Valley United Way. And we always run a campaign throughout the city employees. So we try to fundraise as an employer and have our employees donate to our campaign. I manage that too, as just kind of a part of something that just falls under my job. We always say when something comes up and we don't know who's going to do it, we just look at each other and we're like, well, your job description says, and other duties as assigned. So sometimes things fall under my job that might not necessarily sound like it works with what I do, but it all works out. Patty, you have a question.
Yeah, what's been your most successful ways of communicating and interacting with the community?
Well, not having Facebook was pretty significant when I first started here. So I think starting that Facebook page was very crucial to communicating with the public. And I do think, even though it's still in its infancy, this podcast that we started has been really good. We have over 1,000 unique listeners. We just started it at the end of November. We're not doing any paid advertising for it or anything like that. We're just posting about it on Facebook and just trying to see how it will grow on its own. But we do have plans to try to get some like bigger guests on the show to help us boost that a little bit too. Maybe some state leaders. The state auditor comes to Fairmont pretty regularly, and I think that he has a lot of interesting things to say that pertain to things going on in Fairmont. And I do think that he would, obviously have a much broader span of listeners than just people here in Fairmont. And I also think that having our website set up the way that it is, Civic Plus allows us to send out direct notifications to people through text or email. So I think that has helped a lot with engaging the community. We can send them city council agendas through that. We can send them a lot of really, minutes. Meeting notices are the primary things, but we also have the ability to send them other things like little news flash tidbits that we put on our homepage on our website and things like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Luke.
Hey, so this is gonna be a little clunky of a question. Facebook. I don't have Facebook, and from what it sounded like you didn't have Facebook. How much longer do you think Facebook is going to be relevant for communicating, if that makes sense? Because I know a lot of younger people aren't on it as anywhere near as much as people who have been around a little longer.
I had it in 2014 as far as like having a personal page, but I also have MySpace, and some of you guys might not even have ever had a MySpace. I've spanned, I think, the whole social media presence. But I do think that we see a lot of people, we're always looking at our demographic on our social media page. And I think it's like I want to say off the top of my head, it's like the 25 to 34 range is maybe what our highest audience is, which is pretty interesting. But I do think that we post a lot of stuff on Facebook, but we also make sure that you can see that on our website. So on our homepage, you can see our most recent posts on our page. I think that helps, but we are an older community and we do see a lot of older people posting a lot of things on Facebook as well. So I think from a government standpoint, how I look at it as like, what other ways are people going to get their information from their local government? I don't really know other than their local newspapers. But, there's always the question of what's going to happen with your local newspapers. One of ours here has had financial troubles and has been bought and sold by several larger companies. And a lot of people don't really know what the future of that paper is going to look like in 10 years. Hopefully they're still there. We really rely on them. We hope that they're still there too. But, how else? What other ways can we as local governments, we don't have a ton of money to be able to invest in different platforms that would reach a lot of people, but we also have to keep in mind, West Virginia is an older population currently. Fairmont actually has a pretty young population though. I think our average age is like 34 and a half, which is pretty interesting. But for us, I think that Facebook's going to still be pretty relevant moving forward. I think maybe the future will be us having our own app, but I also look at that as like how many people want another app on their phone. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen, but for us specifically, I think Facebook is going to continue to be pretty relevant. We do utilize Instagram, but I like Instagram just being like fun pictures and stuff. So I don't see us putting out like super, emergency alert kind of things out on Instagram, but Facebook is a good place for that stuff to live. Kayla, can you talk more about the podcast? What was the basic equipment that you used? The basic equipment that we use, I know nothing about it. My coworker has his own personal podcast, and our boss is really into audio recording and stuff like that. So but we have 4 mics. That's all that we have set up. And so we have the ability, there's 2 of us, 2 hosts, and we can have 2 guests on right now. And we do not have a studio. We record it in a conference room, but it's working really well. And I think it sounds pretty good. I think that the equipment that we bought worked really well for us. But the podcast is called The Fairmont Bridge. You can find it anywhere that you get your podcasts. If you want to take a listen, some of them are maybe for you guys a kind of boring, because if you're not from here, it's not gonna, be super interesting, but I do think that there is some stuff to learn if you're interested in municipal government work for sure. But I can look up what our equipment is and send that to Monica maybe after, but I'm not really sure what it is. And let's see, William.
So you talked about your Instagram. So why don't you probably want to expand more using Instagram for like the population, like our generation? Because I feel like we like to post more on that, and even like the explorations of Fairmont State, of Fairmont.
So we use Instagram to post a lot of images and a lot of like fun graphics that we make with fun information that we have to put out there. But as far as using Instagram, the biggest issue that I have with Instagram is being able to click through the links. I think that that's something that's going to start changing soon. But a lot of times we want to direct people back to our website. So we want to put a link in that text to be able to send people back to the website for the more, in-depth details for some of that information. So I'm not opposed to using Instagram at all. I try to post pretty regularly, especially since the beginning of this year on Instagram, but I want that stuff to be like more fun and light and about being outside or cool projects that are going on, and less about boil water advisories or how your trash collection is going to take place this week because it snowed on Tuesday. That's just the kind of stuff that we are sort of putting on Instagram, but it's not my preference. It's just another, it's another way to get that out there. But some of this stuff, it's not something that I would necessarily want to read on Instagram. It's something I would rather go to Facebook or an email and check and see that. So we're just trying to always be mindful of that and try to keep Instagram light. That's why everyone likes it. I think, it's fun, it's light, it's interesting, beautiful images to look at, fun images to look at. So we kind of want to always keep that in mind too. Let's see, April.
Hello. Just to add on to that, I think that's really cool that you keep Instagram light. So it kind of not forces in a bad way, but it kind of forces them to be subscribed to the email and to go to Facebook to get all the information. So I actually think that's a good tactic. I loved how you were spitting out like statistics, and I was wondering, A, what platforms do you use? And B, which one is your favorite? Because you're like, oh, I noticed this percentage amount of people are actually in their 30s. So I was just wondering, how do you collect all that? Does that make sense?
So because I operate on a small budget, I don't have a specific platform for that. I use just the business suite through Facebook for as far as our Facebook and Instagram. And for the age, like just the general population, the planning department does a lot of studies, feasibility studies and stuff for our buildings. And when we do that, those companies always give us that kind of information. So we always hold on to that for other things. Right now we're using it. Fairmont's trying to do a remote worker program, trying to bring people to move here. I think Shepherdstown got it. It's the Ascend West Virginia, where they pay people to move there, but we didn't get selected. So we're trying to figure out ways that we can get people interested in Fairmont, since Morgantown was selected for that, but we're a good bedroom community of Morgantown. But you know, we've got a lot of other stuff going on and a lot more appeal, we think, because our housing is cheaper, but we like having those statistics like the housing prices and the average age. So a lot of people would think, like, at first glance, Fairmont's average age is probably like, I don't know, 50 years old, but it's actually 34 and a half. So we're getting a lot younger, and we want to make sure that we have that information anytime we do a new study so that we can use that in ways that help us.
That is amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, let me see. Michelle.
Hi. So I heard you guys do podcasts. So what is the process of doing the podcast and, setting it, like, planning it out and trying to figure out how to appeal towards people?
So I had this idea of the podcast because we used to do an informative type Citizens Academy where people had to, come to a class, and it was a weekly class, and you got to sit down with the department heads. You got to ask them your questions, learn about how they operate, everything that they do. But attendance for that, people have their own lives and they don't necessarily want to take several weeks worth of time out to come to classes like this, especially if it's, in the evenings, people have families and stuff like that. So attendance kind of dropped off. And so then we stopped doing it, and we were always wanting to find a way to start it up again. And I also see it as a way for us to combat some misinformation that's always floating around. So we decided to do it. I mean, I came running into work and I was like, I have this great idea. Let's do a podcast. And I think like within 2 days we ordered the equipment, and it just went really quickly. But we kind of sat down and made an outline of all of our department heads, all of the, organizations that we would want to sit down and talk with, like our United Way director, the president of our Chamber of Commerce, as far as outside groups and organizations. But then, of course, we want to sit down with the city manager. She was our first episode. Council members. We have 9 council members in Fairmont. And outside of the, hour, 2-hour meetings twice a month, people don't really get to know anything about them. If you know them personally, because a lot of people in Fairmont know each other, then you know them. But if you have no idea, if you're moving here from somewhere and you don't know, either they've already been elected or they're up for re-election, you're like, I don't know this person, and I'm probably never going to get to know this person. It's a good way for people to learn about them. Or if they're brand new on council and people know them, but they didn't know that they were interested in council and they don't know what their ideas are for council, it's a great way to learn that too. So we've seen it as a really good tool for us to at least put that information out there. And then, when we post something on Facebook about that topic and somebody says, oh, well, why aren't they tearing down this junky house on my street? Why don't they do this? Why don't they do that? Well, then if we've recorded a podcast episode, we can reply as the city and say, we actually recorded an episode of our podcast about this, and we think it would really answer your questions and give you more information. So it's been a really, really good thing for us. A lot of people are excited about it. we have a couple of people we're going to have to twist their arms a little bit to get them to participate. But once we sit down and record at the end, they're like, this is so fun because it's not a structured, we do a little outline just to try to stay on task, but it's not rehearsed. They're really not heavily edited. It's just, if we edit out the ums and, if somebody messes up saying something, but it's really good, and it's more relaxed environment because I think that makes them comfortable when we're recording it, but it also makes the listener really comfortable too. And we have a lot of people in Fairmont that commute. So a lot of people commute to Bridgeport, Clarksburg, or Morgantown for work, or even beyond that. And this is a good thing for them to be able to do while they drive. So we just thought, this is a way for you to learn about how your local government works on your own time when you want to, as you can sit down and listen to all of them, or you can sit down and listen to one. You can listen for 10 minutes. You can listen to a full episode, whatever you want to do. So it's a really accessible, we think, way for people to listen to and learn.
Yeah, of course. I think it is a great idea. Do you think other cities should do this and other towns should start doing podcasts for a lot of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody should at least try it, get a feeler, see what people think about it. I think that we're the first municipality in West Virginia to do one. I don't know 100%, but I looked a lot when we were looking into doing it, and I couldn't find it. But there are a lot of cities in other areas that do it. I actually think that Hagerstown, Maryland might have one. That might be the closest one. And then there is an office, I think the West Virginia State Development Office has one too, but no municipalities. And I think, a citizen academy is a good idea, but people might see what we did. People fall off and just things come up and they can't attend anymore. But also we're still living in the middle of a pandemic. So that's another thing. We want to make sure that everybody feels like it's something that they can participate in and they can do it without having to worry about their health. So that was another aspect to it that really encouraged us to just go ahead and jump in and do it. But I think that everybody should do it, especially if they're having a lot of misinformation, or just like things get mixed up in the shuffle, or most cities have a lot of things that are a long process, and it's really hard for us to explain it to somebody through written word on our website. But also, who wants to sit down and read paragraphs and pages and pages and pages of an explanation when you could just sit down and listen to somebody say it? So I think it works really well for us in several aspects. Okay, let's see, Ricky.
Yeah, I was wondering, as far as community engagement, I was wondering if TikTok or anything like that would be something that you guys would use or do use to reach a wider audience. Sorry, I don't remember if anybody already.
We do not use TikTok. Maybe if I get a summer intern, if anybody wants a summer internship, maybe we would jump into using TikTok. But I try to stay up to date with all of that stuff and learn things. So I'm trying to get a little bit more familiar with doing things like that. I do think that it's something that Instagram's trying to compete with them right now with Reels. So I think that it's something, if we did it, we would probably start doing Reels first, because we already have an established Instagram account, and we might see how that goes. And then if that seems like we had really good feedback from that, or it was a good way for us to get information out, then we might consider TikTok. But I might have to really work hard to convince people of that one here.
Right. Gotcha.
Okay, Jacob.
What led you to Fairmont rather than a different city?
I was just trying to find a job in this north central West Virginia area at the time, and Fairmont was the first place that called me for an interview and it went really well. I also, one of my best friends from college lives here. So that kind of helped me feel comfortable moving here. I was not familiar with Fairmont whatsoever whenever I applied, other than knowing that she lived here and visiting her family here. But I hadn't really spent a lot of time in Fairmont. But I also, in my interview, the city manager at the time said, I really think that Fairmont is just at the beginning of a lot of really great things happening. And if you want to come here, I think that you will be able to be here and be part of those things and be a witness to those things. And he has since left. He works for an architecture firm in town now, and we both serve on the Chamber of Commerce board together. And he was right. There's a lot of great things that are going on in Fairmont, and there's a lot of things that we're right on the cusp of. We have a lot of really big projects going on, and the longer that I've been here, the more involved I've gotten in the general community, and not just through my job, but just in my personal life as well. So I really enjoy Fairmont, and I think, if there's somewhere that you think might be a good fit for you, not sure, and kind of have some friends that live close, go for it. If nothing else, it's a learning experience of an interview. And actually, when I interviewed for this job, they gave me some knowledge, skills, abilities tests, which is something that I had not encountered in any of my other job searches in the past. And that was very interesting. I had to create a presentation about why somebody should purchase a historic building in downtown Fairmont, a historic building that I had never seen. I knew absolutely nothing about, but it really engaged me to learn about Fairmont ahead of time, but also, put some of my research skills to the test through trying to figure out something about this building. It was the old Masonic Temple building. There's not really a lot of information out there about it, but I must have done a really good job with my presentation because I ended up getting hired. But it was just something that I had never encountered before, and I don't really think that they've done that for a lot of positions here since then. So definitely keep that in mind as you guys are looking for a job. Is somebody, you might be able to tell somebody that you're really good at something, like writing a press release. That was one of the things that I also had to do. But they might say, okay, show me. And then you need to make sure that those skills are as sharp as you are trying to portray, for sure. Okay, Monica.
So I know, when you sent me your little profile of what you've done, that you used to work with tourism for Grant County.
Yes.
And I was wondering, that position versus the one you're in now, how do the responsibilities differ? I mean, I would think that there's a lot of tourism in your job now, perhaps, to attract people, or what is the real difference between those, and what kind of working environment was it before?
We don't really do a lot with direct tourism because we do have a Marion County Convention and Visitors Bureau here, but I love tourism. I am in this position now because I made a choice to stay in West Virginia for, a variety of reasons. Some of those being, I like living here. My family's here, but also because I think that there's so much untapped potential in West Virginia, and tourism is, I'm really rusty on my statistics about tourism because it's been a while, but it's one of the top industries in the state of West Virginia. And so it's very, very important. We're super lucky to have a wonderful tourism director here. So she does the bulk of things, but we definitely support her. But I guess, from a tourism aspect, we're always trying to attract new businesses, and restaurants and hotels are definitely businesses, and retail is a big thing for tourism as well. People want to eat somewhere, sleep somewhere, and shop somewhere when they come to visit. And so, indirectly, we're doing it that way. but also directly, my department is directly involved with completing the rail trail system through Fairmont, and that's going to be a major boom for tourism. So tourism is something that we're always keeping in mind. And, I think that quality of life things are also great for tourism. And that's something that, you know, I I work on, and I think that maybe it's more so even because I'm now in the planning department that those are things that we look at. And so we want to make sure that people see the potential and how we're working really hard to create these nice things. And a lot of these things are based on suggestions from the community. So it's that outreach and trying to reach into the neighborhoods and figure out what people want to see here. Because, maybe someday somebody will be visiting and then a couple years later they'll move here. And so they'll go from being a tourist to a resident. Who knows? But that's always the hope.
Did you make a lot more use of Instagram in that position?
Yeah. Yeah. In Grant County, if anybody's familiar with Grant County is one of the most beautiful places in the state. And it's close to, so many landmarks that people know about in West Virginia. And so there's definitely more potential, but I actually don't think that we even had an Instagram back then, because that was 2014 when I was there. And I don't think that we had started an Instagram at that point. They may have one now, but I definitely would have had more Instagram content back then, for sure.
Thank you.
Carly, what kind of advertisements are being put out for the podcast? We are just posting every week about the episodes. We integrated it with our Facebook page, so they automatically post to Facebook every time a new episode comes out, and you can listen to them directly on Facebook. I think Facebook's kind of still working on how they do that, because you can only see it on mobile. And so I can't even see the posts from the desktop when I'm checking out our Facebook page. But I'm starting to see, like, when people like the post of it from the mobile version when the podcast is posted. So I'm thinking maybe soon we're going to be able to play it directly on Facebook, on desktop, and on mobile. But we immediately integrated it into our Facebook page. So when a podcast episode gets uploaded, it's automatically posted with the description for the episode. So in the description, we always put, who we're talking to. If they're from another organization, we put the link to their website, or just a link to their department page if it's somebody that works here. And we also are posting about it throughout the week. So, hey, did you catch the latest episode? And that's pretty much it for now. Hoping people want to cross post it, share it with their friends. But, we're trying to see kind of where this goes, give it 6 months and see what we want to do. If we do want to start advertising it, that's something I would like to do, but it's not something that I can 100% make the decision on spending the funds for. So we have to, have a plan in place. But I think as we get some more interesting guests on, we have some people that a lot of people are going to want to hear from coming up. So we're interested to see how many listens we get with those episodes and how that helps the rest of the episodes grow as well. Kayla, where do you see this podcast within the next 5 years? I don't know. I mean, I hope that it's something that everybody's like wanting to copy and like be just like us. And we're getting all these great guests from the state and, maybe national leaders. I don't know. We've had a lot of buzz going on in Fairmont about some stuff. So we're hoping to continue it, but we also would like to see in the future taking public questions. That's something that we talked about from the beginning, but we also wanted to just kind of give more of an introduction to start with and not necessarily do that right at the beginning. So we have things that we definitely want to cover. And then maybe in future episodes when we bring back the same guest, we'll start doing a questions from the public segment on the podcast. Our city manager has talked about wanting to do them live. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that, but that could be in the future. And she's also discussed actually getting us our own studio space, which that would be very exciting for us to have a dedicated studio. And I think too that, if we did record them live, or maybe we just record them and we just, record a video recording of us and then we posted that to YouTube or something. I could definitely see that happening. I don't know if I'm really ready for live. They'll have to do some convincing to me for that part. But we'll see. I hope it's still around in 5 years, and I hope it's definitely grown. But maybe some Q&As with the public, and even having local business owners on to talk about their business, doing a business spotlight would be really cool too. Robert, we're a local radio station and they promote Shepherdstown restaurants. You advertise local eateries and discuss some other podcasts. So Robert, we don't currently, but if somebody who's a guest on mentions the name of a business, we don't edit it out. We let it stay in there. We have Fairmont has a lot of hot dog stands around, if anybody is not familiar. And so that's a big debate, who has the best hot dogs in town. So if somebody wants to say that they like Yan's better than Woody's, or they like Woody's better than Right Dogs, that's a big competition in town. Another big competition with food places is who has the best pepperoni roll, because Fairmont is the home of the pepperoni roll, if nobody knew that, or if you don't know what a pepperoni roll is, I guess. It is a bread filled with pepperoni baked into it. The sweet shop has really good ones, so you should go there. But in Fairmont, they do not put cheese in them. The sweet shops, I think, are perfect, but in Fairmont, they don't put cheese in them. And that's a big competition. So we recently had a city council member, and she was very nervous about saying where her favorite place to get a pepperoni roll was from. And we were like, no, it's fine. You live here too. And she was like, I just don't want to show any kind of favoritism or anything like that. And, people need to know that you're patronizing local businesses as well. So, you might have your preference. Everybody does. So that's the only way that we talk about local eateries or businesses or anything like that. But we're hoping to add that really soon. We used to do a local business of the month feature in 2020, but of course the pandemic happened and everything was kind of upended. And we did it for a year, and then the price was going to change, and there were some questions of whether we should really be spending the money on a really nicely produced video. So we decided to take a break. I was also going on maternity leave at the time, so it was just kind of a slow exit from doing that, but we're looking to do that again, except we're going to kind of do it on a lower budget end. We're just going to do some photos ourselves, and then a little write-up for social media and Instagram. And then we also have an economic development website. But we're going to start doing that on a smaller scale really soon. And we've talked about also going over those on the podcast as well. Shayna.
Hi. So I'm actually from Grant County. So
okay,
I'm interested to hear what all what kind of work you did there, or what you would say is most different from what you were doing back then to working in Fairmont now.
Working in Grant County was a lot more fun field trips. One time I got to Just Plain Adventures is a really cool business that's in Grant County, and they do flight tours. And I got to go up in a plane with a journalist from, I think it was from Blue Ridge magazine. He wanted to come do a story about Grant County. And so Just Plain Adventures took us up. we got to fly over Seneca Rocks, which was like so cool. And then after we got back, we drove over to Seneca Rocks and hiked up Seneca Rocks. And so just doing fun stuff like that was great. And making sure, spending time with somebody who is writing a story about the county to make sure that they're not just seeing like the little highlights that everybody sees and going to all of the, the little hidden gems in the area was always a lot of fun. But I worked on a lot of advertising campaigns for Grant County. So at the time, the state had a matching advertising program. So you could apply for the funds. You had to have a way to track it. So we had to make a special URL just for the ads so that we could track how many people had actually seen it and gone to our website because of those specific ads. And I'm forgetting what the company was at the time, but we actually got to run ads in the game day, I don't know, books that the Washington Nationals gave out, but they weren't just for that game day. They were the ones that like they sold or maybe just gave away at every single game for the whole season. So Grant County had an ad in that because Washington, D.C. was one of our key demographics of people visiting. We also went to one of the biggest things that I worked on when I was there was joining forces with Hardy and Pendleton County and going to a large conference, travel and tourism conference in Washington, D.C. with them. It's something that was too expensive for us to do on our own, but together the three counties could join together and go and hand out information about our whole area. And so we actually put together a little pamphlet about all three counties. So it was all I forget what the catchphrase was for it, but we actually won an award for advertising collaborations at the State Tourism Awards. So things like that, just making sure it was less about doing stuff for people in the community, which I think is probably the biggest difference. Is everything I do here at the City of Fairmont is stuff that I want the people that live here or work here or have a business here to see and to interact with. Whereas in Grant County, I work with all of these people. I try to collaborate with all these people, but the work that I do isn't necessarily for their eyes to see. They already live here. I'm not trying to convince them to come here to visit. I'm trying to convince somebody else to come here and visit and spend their money. And, the CVB generates their funding off of hotel motel tax. So in order to, really have an effective program that brings some money back to us, as if these people actually come and not just like go to a restaurant. Of course, we want that too, but we want them to stay for a while in a hotel or one of the motels or a cabin or something like that generates some of that money so that we can put it back into spending more money on doing that again. Okay, does anybody else have anything?
I guess that, you guys have probably, unless you have some other questions, maybe just to wrap up, could you talk about, if you were graduating this spring, as many of these students are, what skills do you think that you should have in order to be successful? What skills did you use the most from learning here in Comm, and what are things maybe that you wished you'd paid more attention to?
Oh, geez. I think I really wish I would have paid more attention to some graphic design stuff. I cannot Photoshop anything to save my life. I am very good in Canva, but Photoshop I cannot do. So I do wish that I would have kind of diversified my skills and learned a lot more about some design things, because I think that it would have really benefited me. And there's a lot of times that, even if I did know how to do that, I probably still would send a project out to somebody else to do, like a new logo or something like that. But as far as like stuff on our website or something for social media. I mean, I can do that stuff in Canva, but it would look a lot cooler if I could do it in Photoshop and know what I'm doing. So that's probably the biggest thing, and that's something that I've really gone back and forth with trying to figure out how to do it now. You know, I did get my master's in integrated marketing communication from WVU in I graduated in 2018, and that is something that the City of Fairmont helped pay for. And I wish I would have thrown in a graphic design class randomly, not with that program, but maybe somewhere else. But one of the things that I think has really helped me, you know, I did minor in print journalism. I know that that's, you know, I don't even know if that's still a minor that is at Shepherd anymore, but, you know, going to interview people for stories for the Picket. I used to write for the Picket. That's really, you know, taught me a lot about how to make the phone calls to the people who are in the, you know, the big bosses somewhere and not feel intimidated when you make that call. That was probably one of the things whenever the new, the art department buildings were being put in. That was a big story that I covered. And so I had to talk to a lot of people. And as a student, it was kind of intimidating. And, you know, I really think a lot of the stuff that I learned in capstone class was great. You know, having to put together all this stuff as if it was actually going out into the world was, you know, very helpful to me, and it really helped me not necessarily create a template, but kind of create a template for things that I had to do later moving forward. And I interned with Platinum PR whenever I was still in school. I forget when I first interned for her. I think it was like 2011, and then I ended up getting a job working part-time for her while I was still in school. So, you know, a lot of the stuff that I learned working for her helped me with school and vice versa. And so I think, you know, don't be afraid to put yourself out there for, you know, a cool internship, but then see how you can still help them while you're in school, because it's still going to help you in the process, especially if it's, you know, something you really think that you want to do moving forward. Sandy and I are still very close and talk pretty regularly. So, you know, it was a great experience, and it wouldn't have been possible without Monica bringing her to our class to present to us. And I don't even remember which class that was, Monica, but she came to our class to do some presentation, and I was like, wow, that sounds like a really cool place.
I think it's probably for ad imagery or something like that.
Maybe.
I don't remember either.
Yeah. But, you know, it's just Monica and the rest of the team in the comm department really was always super helpful. I think at the time there really wasn't any kind of marketing that wasn't in the business school at the time too. So you guys always helped me navigate how I could come up with what I wanted to do with different classes and piece things together. But I think that you guys are, you know, you've made it so close to the end, and you're almost there. But you know, try some new things that make you a little uncomfortable. Take a graphic design class. So, but yeah, I think that, you know, Shepherd was some of the best years of my life for sure. And I think that it was such a great program to come from. I always recommend Shepherd to everybody. So
that's nice. It's funny, you know, you mentioned the graphic design. We were just talking today in our faculty meeting that I'm probably going to be starting a class called Visual Communications for Strategic Marketing. So
yeah, I need that class. Can I sign up?
So a lot of people have mentioned that. So yay. Mm-hmm. But thanks so much. And I'm, you know, very appreciative of your spending your time. And I think this was really interesting. We have never had anybody that really works in the sector that you are right now. But anyway, thanks.
Thank you for having me. And if anybody else needs anything, I'm happy to connect. I'm in the comm group on Facebook. So